You do well or not, Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. Fisher Investments, clearly better money management.
Welcome back. I'm David Gura at MSNBC headquarters in New York. To flip or not to flip? With apologies to Bill Shakespeare, that is the question we assume Michael Cohen is asking himself day after day after day. The president's longtime lawyer, who once said he would take a bullet for Donald J. Trump, Rudy Giuliani, is attacking Michael Cohen's credibility again today. It's amazing how his opinion of Michael Cohen has changed over these recent months.
Well, I expect that he is going to cooperate with him. I don't think they'll be happy with it because he doesn't have any incriminating evidence about the president or himself. The man is an honest, honorable lawyer. I expected something like this from Cohen. He's been lying all week. I mean, he's been lying for years. There's nobody that I know that knows him that hasn't warned me that if he's back is up against the wall, he'll lie like crazy because he's lied all his life.
Joining me now, Naveed Jamali. He's an MSNBC contributor, former FBI double agent, and Joyce Vance is with me as well. She's also an MSNBC contributor and a former U.S. attorney. Joyce, let me start with you. Let's try to get in the mind of Michael Cohen here a little bit. So much has changed here over the course of the last week. There was the specter of there being tapes. On Tuesday, we heard the tape. On Wednesday, there was the first report here that Michael Cohen might be willing to say to a special counsel investigator that, in fact, Donald Trump knew about the meeting at Trump Tower before it occurred. Give us your sense of what he's thinking about, what he's weighing, what the options are for Michael Cohen if he were to play.
Cohen has sent a lot of signals this week that he's interested in cooperating with prosecutors. We don't know if he's had formal conversations or, frankly, even if prosecutors in Southern District of New York are interested in taking a look at what Cohen has to offer. But if they, in fact, are, it seems likely that Cohen, who's spent at least a decade of time with Trump, watching the daily in and outs of his life, would be able to provide not just testimony to prosecutors, which there's been a lot of talk about this week, but really a roadmap to the kind of deals Trump has been involved in, to the way that he conducted those deals, and to what sort of entanglements he might have that would interest prosecutors. A lot of danger here for the Trump camp, and that's why we've seen Giuliani come out so strongly.
Yeah, we have seen that. I'm going to read a tweet from him. Press saying today that Lanny Davis is getting ready to leak more of his client's surreptitiously recorded tapes. All you're going to get, Rudy Giuliani writes, is destroying Cohen's credibility and his usefulness as a witness and his career as a lawyer. Get some competent legal advice. Naveed Jamali, I want you to weigh in on this as well. You've probably heard what Rudy Giuliani's been saying today, casting doubt here on the authenticity of the tape we've heard, casting doubt on Michael Cohen's competence, having done all of this. I want your perspective here as somebody who worked for the FBI just about what these tapes mean and how they might be used here as this legal case advances.
Well, to be fair to Michael Cohen, I mean, he might have said he was going to take a bullet for Trump, but he never said he was going to go to jail. I think jail has a very strong motivator, is a strong motivator for people to do things. And I think the FBI sort of has Cohen dead to rights. And look, you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a double agent to understand that there is something to the fact that Russia's public attacks, the fact that they released certain things at certain times and where they align with what Donald Trump was saying, that it is more than likely that Russia was in some way coordinating with Americans. And they were coordinating this attack, this operation with Americans. Michael Cohen probably has a lot to say about that. Even if he didn't meet with Russians or he doesn't have direct knowledge of the Russians, I'm sure that he can lay out what many believe is, in fact, collaboration between Americans and the Russians to carry out this attack on our democracy.
Joyce, what are the perils of the way this is playing out? You've got lawyers fighting lawyers. That is something that often happens inside a courtroom. It's happening here on cable television. It's happening here on Twitter. It's happening in the public square. What are the perils of that for the principals who are involved in all of this?
None of this should be playing out in the public square. It's bad for Cohen. Frankly, if he's looking for a cooperation deal with prosecutors, he and his lawyers want everything to be done quietly. They want it to be done in one-on-one meetings with prosecutors rather than having the public privy to the entire spectacle. And the same is frankly true for the president. No one who's under investigation, whether it's the president himself or other members of his administration, should have that investigation carried out publicly. Rather, we should wait until prosecutors have gone through all of the evidence and are able to make prosecutive decisions deciding who's committed criminal conduct that should be charged. We have as strong of an interest here in protecting potential defendants as we do in protecting potential witnesses. And because we want ultimate decisions to be made by juries who hear only the evidence that's presented to them in a courtroom, this whole idea that it's happening in public is really a little bit distressing from a prosecutor's point of view.
Naveed, weigh in here. I see you nodding as Joyce is talking.
I just want to say, I think people forget that on October 31st, 2016, President Obama called Vladimir Putin on the red phone and essentially warned him that Russian interference on Election Day would constitute an act of war. And I think that when we have a president who coddles and refuses to condemn Russia, who has some weird affliction and affinity towards Vladimir Putin, it sends mixed messages. And while we're doing things in public, while we're worrying about Michael Cohen and what it means for the Mueller investigation, which is hugely important, it's important to understand that Vladimir Putin doesn't care what Michael Cohen says. That Vladimir Putin's ideology and Russian ideology will remain the same. That is to say, they view the United States as their main adversary. And unless the man or woman who inhabits the White House, who happens to be the president, is strong against Russia, as President Obama was on that October 31st day, we are going to see more of the same. And it is disturbing me that we don't seem to have the strength and that resolve to call out Russia. All
right, great conversation. Thanks to both you. Naveed Jamali and Joyce Vance joining me on this Sunday. And tonight, MSNBC is going to present All the President's Men, the award-winning true story of two Washington Post reporters whose investigation uncovered the political scandal that led to the downfall of President Richard Nixon. You can watch All the President's Men tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on MSNBC. And we'll be right back.